Hello everyone, this is Sheila back with another tutorial. This time I'm doing a little 22-inch. It's open moss stitch. This one, a button-up cardigan. And I have another one to do with 24-inch. When I get the both of them finished, I'll be doing a PDF format for them. So that'll be at least two sizes on the PDF when I get it sorted. But this is for the 22. It's an order I'm doing at the moment, and I have cast on 60 stitches using 3.25mm needles, and then I knit 10 rows and 1 by 1 rib. I've done a twisted rib here. That's the kind of rib I prefer. I'll blow it up so you can see better. And then I'm knitting the open moss stitches, just knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2 across the whole row, and then the next row is purl, and then the row after that, where you had knit 2, where you started with knit 2 on the one before, the next one you start with purl 2, knit 2, so you go purl over the knit and knit over the purl, and so on, and then another purl row. So there's actually 4 rows to the pattern, and that's on this one here. I started off with 2 rows, a knit row and a purl row after the rib before I started the pattern on 4mm needles. And this one I'm knitting until it gets to 8.5 inches. And then I will be back to show you the rest from the armholes, what I'm doing from there. And this one is knit with, this is a wool called Amelia. I got this in Wilko quite a while ago actually. It's 100% acrylic. It's lovely and soft. It's a lovely wool to knit with. I've knit quite a few things with this one, but it seems to have disappeared from Wilko. I haven't been able to find it since. And it's not a one you can find just anyway. I don't know where else I can get this from, but it is a lovely wool to knit with. And there are 330 meters in it, in 100 grams, which is a good distance that you've got to knit actually. It's like Wilko's own wool. Theirs has 340 meters to 100 grams. And that's what I'm knitting it with anyway, and I'll be knitting the other one as well because I have a few balls of that. And when I get up to the armholes, I will be back and showing you a little bit more. So I've knitted up to 8.5 inches from the bottom here up to where I started shaping the armholes, and I've cast off 3 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows, and then the shaping I've knit another 2 rows after that, and I'm doing decreasing every 4th row for 2 times. So I've done it once there and once there. Now I'm doing it every alternate row. But I'll show how I'm doing the decreasing on this because it's not a normal decrease. Got it on there. I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches. I'll blow it up a little bit. Knit the first 2 stitches. Slip 1. Knit 1. And then work the pattern across the row, work the decreasing into the pattern. It's just knit 2s and purl 2s. And I'll meet you at the end of that row. And I'm on to my last 4 stitches. I'm going to knit 2 together, and then knit 2, and then on the purl row the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches will be knitted. So that's knit 2 and purl to the last 2 stitches. And I will meet you at the end of that row. and we're going to the last 2 stitches. Oh, that stitch there hasn't thingied over. Last 2 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together. And that's how the decreasing is going to be. Every other row, going to knit 2 together, slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over at the start, knit 2 together at the end. And on the hello everyone, I'm back with another part of the cardigan. I have done the armhole shaping up to the back of the neck, and I now have 20 stitches which I've put on a holder. And if you look closely, you can see the garter stitch border on the edge of the raglan. I'll blow that up a bit so you can see it better. And there's certain patterns, that's how I like to do those, the garter stitch border. It makes a nice effect to it. And all that garter stitch border is, instead of knitting, knit 1, slip 1, pass slip stitch over, and then on the other row, well, at the other end, you do knit 2 together and then knit 1. But on the other row, on the purl side, instead of purling all the way across, I knit the first 2 stitches, and on this pattern it's you purl on the wrong side. You purl across to the other side, to the last 2 stitches, and just knit those 2 stitches. So you get the garter stitch all the way up, because you're knitting on both sides, 2 stitches at each end. And that's how you do that border on there, which I think makes a nice effect to some patterns, especially this one. So that's what I've done on that. And I've started on the one of the sides, the left front, and I've cast on 28 stitches for that. And I've just started the pattern, and it doesn't matter what you start with, knit 2, purl 2, or purl 2, knit 2, because it works out. It doesn't make any difference. It works out the same up the sides and whichever way you're doing the raglan, but you still must have an even number of stitches for it to come out to have then to start with knit 2 and end with knit 2, or start with knit 2 and purl 2, knit 2. You must have an even number of stitches. So there's 28 stitches there, 10 rows of rib, and I've just started the actual pattern, and I'll come back to that when I get up to the armholes. This is the left front, and I have knitted 8.5 inches up to the armhole for this 22 inch, and then I knit 3 rows, but on the purl row, on the shaping side, I purled 2 stitches. I knit 2 stitches and then purled the rest. But on the 5th row, I decreased and then knit up to the next 4th row and did another decrease, and then I'm doing every alternate row now. So I did a decrease, blow it up. So I did a decrease here on the 5th row, then on the next 4th row, and now it's on alternate rows. And I'm knitting 2, slip 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch, pass that slip stitch over, and then working the pattern across the rest of the row. And then the next row is purl, just purl across to the last 2 stitches, and you're going to knit those 2 stitches. And my last 2 stitches, I knit 2, and those knit 2 on the purl row keeps the garter stitch edge on the armhole. And so I'm now going to keep decreasing on alternate rows until I have 15 stitches left, and I will be back then. I now have 15 stitches left, and I'm going to cast off 4 stitches at the start of the purl row. 1, 2, 3, there's 4, and then purl across to the last 2 stitches. Knit those 2 stitches, and now I'm going to decrease on the neck edge on the next 3 rows, and still decreasing on alternate rows on the armhole side. And I'm going to knit 2 together on the next side. The next row I'm going to purl 2 together. And purl to the end of the row. I'll purl to the last 2 stitches. Knit 2. And 1 more decrease on the neck edge. The 2 together, and now I'm just going to decrease on the armhole edge until our 2 stitches left. Now I have 3 stitches. I'm going to knit 1, slip 1, pass that slip stitch over. That leaves me with 2 stitches, and I'm going to purl those 2 stitches together now. And then fasten off. And that is the left front. And you do the right front, you just reverse all the shaping. Now I'll be back when I start the sleeves. Well, I am now onto the sleeve, and these are the pieces I've done so far. We'll shift them out the way. And I'll blow this up a bit. And I'm about to do the decreasing on the sleeve. I've cast 34 stitches. There's 34 stitches, and I've knit in the twisted rib for 10 rows. And then I knit 2 rows. And then I started the pattern, which was, I started with a purl 1, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. And then on the 4th row, I increased, but I increased on the purl side because it's easier to add the stitches on the purl side. You don't have to worry about getting the stitches in with the pattern. So I'm going to show how you increase the stitches on the purl side. And I'm purling the first stitch, and then I'm not going into the next stitch. I'm picking up the bit of yarn that is between the two stitches, and I'm putting it on the needle like that. And then you take that, you usually have to lift that stitch up with your finger, put the needle through it and just purl it, and then purl your next stitches. Then as you can see, it's not noticed on the purl side, and you can work that extra stitch in when you come to do the stitching on the other side. And so you just purl to the end of the row to your last stitch, and I will pause until I get that far. And I am now coming up to the last few stitches. I'm going to knit the last two till I have one stitch left on the needle, and I'm going to pick that stitch up. Well, pick up that bit of yarn between the two stitches, put it on the needle, and then, like I'm saying, you probably have to pick that stitch up with your finger because it's a bit awkward to get into it. That's what I do. Just purl that. You're purling that little bit of yarn between the two stitches, and then purl your last stitch. And that's how you increase on the purl side. And now when we go to knit the next row, you look to see what stitch you would be doing. There's 2 knit stitches there, so I'm going to purl over those. So the 2 before that I'm going to knit. So the first 2 stitches here will be purl 2. And the next 2 after that are knit 2. And then purl 2. And as you can see, you can hardly notice where that increased stitch was on the wrong side. And so now you are going to increase. I increased on the 4th row, and then that was the 6th row. I've just done that one on. I'm going to do every other following 6th row until I have 44 stitches, and then I'm going to change it to every 8th row until I have 48 stitches, and then I will come back when I get up to the armholes. So that's the sleeve done, and I've started decreasing the armholes, and I've cast off 3 stitches each end, and then knit 2 more rows and decreased where you knit 2 and slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over to the end, and now the last 4 stitches knit 2 together and then knit 2, and then I knit 3 more rows, and on the 4th row I decreased again, and then on every alternate row after that. That's what I'm doing. And this is one I did earlier. That's the finished sleeve till you have 8 stitches, and then put them on I put them on a safety pin. So I'll show what I'm doing on the wrong side. We're knitting 2 stitches, first 2 stitches, and then purling right across the row to the last 2 stitches again. And the last 2 stitches, we are knitting those 2 stitches. And on the decreasing row, knit the first 2 stitches, slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over, and then carry on with the pattern. Work those decreases into the pattern. And I'll meet you at the end of that row. and we've knit to the last 2 stitches. I'm going to knit those 2 stitches together, knit 2, and that's it. And keep on, carry on decreasing like that until you have 8 stitches left, and then put them on a safety pin, ready for picking the stitches up for the neck. That is my cardigan, all the pieces finished, and I can now put them all together. So I'm going to do the neck first, and I'm going to start with the right front and pick up the stitches here. So I'll blow that up so you can see better. Get the wool and pull some out. I'm going to pick, I'll see how many stitches I get up, because as I had seen, I haven't done this yet. Right, so that's 1 stitch. Get the wool in the right place. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 'There are some holes here that I have to miss. Going to that one, 11, that's 12, 13. So I picked up 13 stitches for the right front. And I'm going to take the stitches off the pin for the sleeve. There's 11, no, sorry, not 11, there's 8 stitches on the sleeve. Going to knit those. 1, 2, 7, 8. That's 8 stitches off that pin. Now for the back, I'm going to pick 20 stitches up from the back. I'm sorry if my hand goes out of focus here, but I'm looking down at what I'm doing, not my phone. 2, 3, 19, that's 20. That's 20 stitches for the back. The next sleeve, I have to pull this pin back a bit, the needle gets stuck in it. One, 2, 7, that's 8. And now down the left front, so I need to pick up 13 stitches down the left front, the same as I did on the right. So that's 1, 2, 11, 12, 13. And that's my 13 stitches for the left front. And I'm going to knit the first row. And that puts a ridge at the start of the neckband, which separates the band from the rest of the cardigan. As you can see, that's what I mean by the ridge across there, and that is on the right side, and it makes the band look much neater where you've picked the stitches up. So I'm going to knit that row, and that is that row knitted all the way across now. And you can see the garter ridge running across there. And now I'm going to do 5 rows in knit 1, purl 1 rib. 4 or 5 rows. I'll not know until I start knitting how many I actually need. So I'll tell you when I come back how many I did. So I will be back when I've done however many rows I need and tell you then. So that's 5 rows I've done in rib. There's 6 altogether with the first knit row that you did across there. And there are 62 stitches on here altogether. Now I'm going to cast off loosely in the same rib that I have been knitting in. So we're going to knit 1, purl 1, pass the slip that stitch over, knit 1 again, pass the other stitch over, and don't pull the stitch tight when you're taking it over, because you don't want it to pull the neckband tight. Just leave it the way you take it off. As you can see, there's a little bit give in that. My needles keep clattering on the bench. So what happens with longer needles, but I can't do it with short ones. And that is how you cast off, just like I showed you. And you can see there's a little bit give. And that you don't want too much give, but don't pull the stitch tight when you're taking one stitch over the other. So there, that's all the stitches picked up, and you can see there's a little bit stretch in the neck. When you put the pieces down, I have a lot of ends here that I always leave long ends for the sewing up afterwards. And as you can see, that's how the neck is going to look. Just about right, the right depth and that. So you don't want a great large, there'll be a gap like that where the bands go. And now to sew this up. What I need for sewing here, I have my pin cushion and pins and needles in, and scissors. So I'm going to take the first seam and pin it. And now we're going to do a flat stitch for the raglans. I'll fasten off these ends because I only need one end. I have two ends here where the two met. Just the longest, keep that one. Cut one of the ends off there. We have 5 pieces, but you only have 4 seams, so you always end up with one extra piece to cut off. I found my needle. I don't want a great long one, that's the one I like. And that little end there, we're going to over sew that end into the thing. So you do a flat stitch. You just take the stitch from either side of the 2 seams that you're sewing up. Pull that one down. And that's how you do a flat seam. You just take a stitch from either side of the seam that you're sewing. Pin out. You hold the 2 pieces together like that and just go stitch on either side. And don't pull the wool tight or else it'll gather the seam up. You don't want the seam to be gathered. Just take the seam like that and just leave it loosely. If you pull the seam too tight, the stitch too tight when you're stitching, it'll gather this up and it won't look so nice afterwards. So that's how you flat stitch. You do all 4 seams like that. And when I finished those seams, I'll come back and show you how to sew the side seams. So that's all 4 raglans sewn up. And as you can see, there's plenty give in the sleeves, the way I sew them. You don't tighten up. Now we fold it over. That's how it's going to look now when it's sewn up. So now I show you how to do the cuffs and the seams. I have the cuff here and I'm going to put a pin just here to hold the cuff down. Take my needle, that one. And we have the 2 edges of the cuff and you do them flat like that, the same way you did the raglan seams. And you just take 1 stitch from one side and 1 from the other. And just flat stitch those seams. until you get down to where you started the pattern. And now we're going to back stitch. You'll need a few pins in the seam. And to back stitch, you just make a stitch, go back over that stitch. The stitch is here, and you're going to go in behind it. And keep going behind each stitch that you do. That's how you do back stitch. There, then you can, hard to see the stitch on the other side, but you get a nice seam up the arm and down the other side, and you do all the cuff edges exactly the same. Flat stitch all the cuff seams and back stitch the rest of the seams. Now that's the cardigan all sewn up now, and it measures, haven't got the bands on yet, but it'll probably be 23 inches when it's finished. It's about 11.5 there. It's 9 inches on the side and 9.5 inches on the sleeve. The full back measurement is 13.5, and we're going to pick up the stitches for the band, and the band is 12 inches. So I have placed markers. This is how I do the bands. I put the markers in every couple of inches, but I've allowed a little bit extra for the top and the bottom. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 11 there, and there'll be 12.5. With that's a little bit extra for the bands, because when you pick the stitches up going that way across the, you're going crossways across the band, it does pull the band up, so you have to have a few extra stitches. So instead of just doing 12, I'm doing 15 here. So we're going to be picking up 81 stitches, I think, altogether. And I start with the button band, which is the button band, yeah, this one here. I get my wool, pull some off. Blow it up again. So I'm going to pick up 6 stitches up to this stitch marker. The stitch marker helps you to keep your stitches even all the way up the band. So that's 1. This thing down. I'll leave a long end there because I'll use that long end to help sew the buttons in afterwards. That's 2. I've picked up a bit of this thing below there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 up to the marker. Take that marker out. And up to the next marker we're going to pick 12 stitches up, so it's 1, 2, 3, miss the next one, 4, 5, 6, miss the next one, 7, 8, 9, miss the next one, that's 10, 11, 12. And that's how you pick up, that's how I pick up the stitches. I pick up 3 and miss a 1. So every 3, it's 3, miss a 1, 6, miss a 1, 9, miss a 1, 12, miss a 1. It might not always work out that. Sometimes you might have to pick most, all the stitches up, those missed ones. It depends on the how slack the stitches are between the markers. So we're going to pick up, and you always start, after you remove a marker, start from 1 again. Don't go 12, 13, go 1. So I'm missing the next one on the 12. So that's 1, 2, 3, miss the next one, 4, 5, 6, miss the next one, 7, 8, 9, miss the next one. Now this one is going to be, I'm not going to miss that one because there wouldn't be enough. That's 10, 11, 12 up to the marker. And that's how you pick the stitches up until you have 81 stitches. That's how many you'll have on the needle. So carry on doing that between the markers, and I will be back after I've picked all the stitches up. So that's all the stitches picked up. And now I'm going to knit across one row. So there, I'm going to knit so you get the garter edge across there, the same as I did on the neck, like there. So you get a garter stitch like that across the knitting here. Find the end I'm knitting with. Now you can see that garter ridge there across there, and that's how that row is going to be. So that's all the stitches picked up. So I'm now going to do knit 1, purl 1, rib. And that is knit one, purl one, rib. I'll be doing that for 6 rows. And I will come back when I have those 6 rows knitted. So I have knit in rib 6 rows, and now I'm casting off the stitches loosely, but not too loose, because you don't want like a hump coming in the middle of the band. So I'm casting them halfway through the row, casting off the stitches, and you just pull just slightly, but not tight, because you still want a little bit give, but not a lot of give. And as you can see, it's still nice and stretchy. So I will get to the end of this and come back after that. And when you're casting off in rib, I cast off in the same rib that I knit. I don't just knit stitches and cast them off. So if you knit in rib, you can cast off on the right side or the wrong side. It doesn't make any difference what side you cast it off on, it looks the same. But if you cast off just using knit stitches, you have to cast off on the right side. So we are got our knitting. Now place markers every place where I'm going to put a buttonhole, as you can see. And it's on a knit stitch. I put the markers on a knit stitch. That's where you do the buttonhole. You knit that stitch and then do the buttonhole. I'll show you when I get up to it. And I'm up to the stitch there. I'm going to knit that stitch, bring the wool forward, knit 2 together, keep your finger on that wool to stop it going tight, and then just knit the 2 stitches together, and there you have quite a slack stitch that you've brought forward. And you're going to knit to the next one. Oops, I've dropped a stitch there. I have to pick that up. Get my needle through it. That's it. That purl stitch. We are coming up to the last buttonhole. And that's a knit stitch where the stitch marker is. So you knit that stitch, bring the yarn forward, knit the next 2 together, put your finger on the yarn there to stop it going tight. And there again you have a nice slack stitch there. That makes the hole big enough for the whatever size button you're doing. If it's a very small button, you don't need to put your finger on that. So that's the buttonholes row done. And then you're going to knit another, that's the 4th row, so you're going to do another 2 rows after that, and then cast off loosely in rib. And that is the buttons I'm using, the 16mm. They're not the smallest buttons, it is a smaller size, I think, that I would do for a smaller cardigan, but that's 16mm what I do for these ones. And it's just the right size to go through those buttonholes. So this is a finished cardigan. See the back as well. Completely finished, buttons on. And I will be making a PDF for this, but I am not going to set the PDF until I have done a few more sizes, because I'm going to do sizes 16, 18, 20, 22 and 24 on one pattern. Now my next cardigan after this is an order. The next one after this is 24 to go with this one, because I have a 22 and 24 to do for the lady for these. But I will be knitting the other sizes, which won't be orders, they will be to sell, but I am just going to knit them just to make sure I get the sizes and everything, the number of stitches, the number of rows and everything right before I actually put the PDF up. So for anyone that wants instructions for this one, anyway, I'm putting this, the page as my work. And as you'll see, don't know if you can make it all out there, I'll have to go down a bit. Hold it up. You see, I've put all, underlined it in red for the size that I'm doing. There are other little bits of information of other sizes on here, but they aren't finished yet, so you can only follow the 22-inch one for this one. So that's the first page. Either take a screenshot or write down, pause the video and write down what's written on there. That's the first page. And that is the second page. And the third page. So I will be uploading this onto my channel, Sheila's Just Knitting now, for anyone that wants to follow along. So up and subscribe, and I'll catch you for the next tutorial.